Hey everyone, quick little announcement here from Fishing the DMV. Our Weekend Warrior Club membership on Patreon is nearly full. There are only 8 membership spots still available. Once these spots are gone, they're gone, and I'll be closing down the club membership to new members until 2026. At that point, you can try to sign up, but it'll be at a higher rate. All Patreon members will receive 5% off their orders to Jake's Bait and Tackle, 10% off their orders to Tiger Crankbaits, 10% off their orders to Catoctin Creek Rods. You'll also gain access to our private Facebook group community. You'll also be allowed to enter our 5 club membership tournaments only with guaranteed payouts. Members only content, ad-free, commercial-free episodes of the podcast, Patreon supporter giveaways, and so much more. And you get all of this for $6 a month, which is less than a pack of Cincos or a jackhammer chatterbait. And since we're under our 10 membership spot, I'm going to do something else. I'm going to give everyone a 10% off their membership if they sign up for the year. So that brings it down to under $65 a year, locked in indefinitely as long as you want to be a member. Hurry up because there's only so many spots left before I shut down the club to any new members until 2026.
You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your host, Thomas Ahrens. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Fishing the DMV. I'm your host, Thomas Ahrens, and today we are heading back down to North Carolina. I am here with Kyle of Farwell Fishing. I talked to him down at Raleigh, and I'm really glad to get him back on now that we're out of the doldrums of winter. Kyle, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I appreciate you bringing me back here. Meeting you at the expo was great. So excited to get back on here and talk some fishing with you.
So how busy have you been the past couple of months?
Past couple of months have been really good. You know, coming out of the winter, we're a little slow. Not many people really want to be out there as much if it's, under 40 degrees, it seems like. So November through January are a little slow. But when we were out there, some people don't realize the crappie fishing is very good when it gets cold if you're willing to dress right for it. And we absolutely smashed them in the wintertime. And now that we're coming into the warmer season, schedule's definitely filling up, and it's a good thing, good problem for me to have right now.
It is a good problem to have. Crappie fishing, man, is something I'm trying to get more and more into and covering. I know, before we started to record, Bugs Island had a really, really crazy limit, over 17 pounds caught in a bobcat event. You fished a tournament recently, correct?
Yeah. This past Saturday, the Big Eye Crappie Fishing Tournament out on Jordan. Yep.
How did that go?
It went well. I ended up taking first for big fish. That went 2.36 for the tournament, which was big fish for the tournament, and then 5th overall. A little disappointed. I should have had that really close in contention for that top spot, but I had a really, really good crappie right next to the boat. It was every bit of 2 pounds, and went to go get the net. I could saw she was barely hooked, and I just so happened to knock the back end of the fish, and the jig popped, and he got off. And that fish cost me. That fish cost me that tournament. It would have been really close to being up there with the top spot, but it always makes you want to go back and crush the next one.
That is brutal, man. That is so brutal. I mean, but you didn't know that. Did you know that at the time in your gut, like, oh, that one's going to cost me? Or
honestly, I did. Every 2-pounder in these tournaments go a really long way. If you can get 7 for 2 pounds, you're getting 14 pounds, you're winning those tournaments, or you're in the money every time. And I knew with the way the conditions were, it was really windy. You really had to capitalize in the morning on those crappie that were still kind of settled in. I was out there first thing in the morning before any other boats were on the water, and there was a bass fishing tournament, a cat tournament that was out there the same morning. Well, before the tournament even got kicked off, our lines went in the water I think it was at 7. As the boats were dumping in, you could start to see these fish starting to settle down. And as soon as they were firing up their motors, I literally watched these crappie go down to the bottom and start to scatter. Like it was crazy, because typically when you're fishing those tournaments, you're out there with the crew of everyone. Well, I was out there before any boats were on the water. I saw these crappie sitting just beautifully. I talked to my wife, my kids before the tournament, and I said, I'm about to smash them. Like, they're set up perfect. And sure enough, like I got them. I had a limit within 30 minutes, but those big ones that I was really keeping my eye on early before the tournament had started to dissipate and started to go away, unfortunately.
What does it tell you about their instincts? Because that's crazy that they almost kind of knew something was up.
Pressure, man. I'm seeing it in the bass fishing world. I think a lot of people are. You look at the tournament weights. Sure, there's good weights. There's great tournaments. There's always people that are going to be catching them in the tournaments, right? It's always going to happen. But you look over the years and those average bags. When I first moved down to North Carolina in 2019, if you didn't have a 30-pound bag, good luck. You weren't winning for the most part. That's what I was noticing when I first moved down here. And those 30-pound bags are still coming in, but just not as frequently as you used to be seeing over the past several years. And even with these crappie, I feel like crappie fishing is really starting to explode and get more and more popular. These crappie are feeling it. They're feeling the pressure, especially in some of these creeks that are very well known. They're always going to be your warmer creeks across the whole entire lake. Those that know how to fish know what creeks to look at, and they're going to be reliable just about every single year. So that pressure is definitely the big part of it.
Is Lake Jordan the primary crappie hotspot right now in North Carolina? Like, what would you consider besides bugs, the big crappie lakes?
I mean, besides High Rock's gotten a lot of attention lately. If you want a good chance of, catching some really big ones, them 3-pounders. I know some people that have been catching some threes this year, and around Raleigh area, I definitely would say Jordan's got a lot of attention. Harris. But one that's not talked about as much as Falls. And I feel like that's a sleeper lake that I personally honestly need to spend a little bit more time on. It's a little bit further for me to make that drive, but I'm gonna spend some more time out there because you don't hear as much about that place. And that place definitely has less pressure compared to Jordan and Jordan and Harris by far.
Is that because of like geography, just people commuting to get there?
I think it's just because it's so well known. Jordan and Harris are just so well known to be really great crappie lakes. Falls is known to have some good crappie in it. And a lot of people will talk about fishing Eno, for some big crappie as well. But around these lakes, Jordan puts out the big bags. I was out a month and let's see, what are we at? We're in mid-March now, a little past mid-March. It was beginning of February. I was out on Jordan, had 16 fish in 4.5 hours, crappie, that were all 2 pounds or greater. Now I caught way more than that, but I had 16 over 2 pounds and had one 2 ounces shy of 3 pounds. So you hear stuff like that, those lakes are putting them out the way that you want them to. So don't be surprised if Falls starts to creep up there and you start hearing more about it.
What depth are you catching them in right now? Are they still pretty deep?
Man, hitting a little sensitive spot there because this weather is just insane. It's kind of frustrating. They're right. We caught them today. I got off a trip today, and they were anywhere. We were catching between 2 feet of water and 14.5 foot of water. It really just depends, and how you target these fish will determine, typically the size of the fish that you're going to get, as well. Like there's a lot of techniques and the ways that you're going to set up to go after specific fish, but you can catch them pretty much anywhere. The big issue is just the weather, right? The weather changes from it getting 80 degrees the past 2 Wednesdays in a row to then 2 nights later getting 30s at night. Those fluctuations really play a part in what these fish are going to do. I've noticed and talked to some other folks as well that there's already a wave of crappie that moved up, dropped their eggs, and they're gone. Those females won't just sit around there and hang out. They'll go up, they'll drop those eggs, and they'll leave. Good luck catching them after. Like you good luck. They're going to go out there, they'll kind of stage and go deeper, and they're just going to hang out. It's harder to catch those fish. So got some consistent weather here. Today was a really good trip. We did pretty well. Had several over 14 and a half inches, which is a really good crappie. And they were females. Those were females that were staging a little bit deeper. If you want to go catch a mess of them, get up in 2 to 6 foot of water, throw a slip cork or throw a jig along some brush and lay downs. And those males are all over. I mean, you hear those fish being called they get their tuxedo this time of year. They get really black, really dark. And that helps them for the spawn, camouflage, and when they're protecting the nest and all the fry. There's a lot of males up shallow right now out on Jordan and even on Harris, but that pollen's getting pretty bad. So if you use a forward-facing sonar, it's become a little bit more difficult.
When you're dealing with clients, how do you balance live bait versus artificial?
It's important to me when I'm going out on trips. I'll ask my clients, what would make this trip a win for you? What do you want to get out of this trip? and I'm going to tailor it to what I know, how we can absolutely crush them, and then kind of balance that into what they want. So it will also really depend on kind of the skill level of the fisherman as well. If people want to learn live scope, that's more advanced than people think, and I know forward facing sonar is a touchy subject, but to keep it real with you, it's not as easy as just throw your forward facing sonar out there and you're going to catch 100 crappie a day. It's just not going to happen. So a lot of the way that I'm balancing it, how do you want to learn? What do you want to learn? It's really important to me that they understand why we're fishing the way we're fishing and how the fish are setting up the way that they are, not just let's just go catch fish. Like my clients need to understand why we're doing what we're doing, because I want them to be able to go out and do it for themselves without a guide, right? It's really important to me to teach, my clients, and it just comes naturally, whether they want it or not, and they're asking for it or not, it's going to happen on my boat. It's just, I like to share information. There's not a ton of guides out there that do it. I get a lot of really good feedback, specifically on Facebook, that people appreciate the input and the guidance and direction. So that translates on my boat as well. What do you want to learn? What do you know? How can I help you so you can go do this on your own? So today we did a lot of long lining, which isn't my favorite, to be honest with you, but if that's what we got to do to catch the fish, I'm going to do that, especially those females who are staging out a little bit that haven't quite moved up. It's really important to make sure that you're focusing on those fish if that's how you want to go catch them. Towards the last hour and a half of the trip, we got off, a little bit deeper, went up, hit the bank, threw some jigs on laydowns, and we were crushing them.
For people at home that don't know, what is long lining?
So long lining, everyone kind of sets it up a little different. The way that I set up my long lines is I have my rod holders on the side of the boat, and you kind of stagger them by length. So the rods that are closest to the transom, the back of the boat, the back of the motor, will be my shortest rod. And I'm running a 6-foot rod. And these are just the rods that I have on me right now. So I'll eventually get more and switch them around and get bigger ones and mess with kind of the lengths. But I'll go 6-foot rods, 6.5, and then I'll go 10-footers, and I'll go 12-footers. And I'm eventually going to get some 16s that will go behind those. And that way you're able to just kind of stagger them, and it helps not having them get tangled up and allows you to be able to work a lot more lines at once and cover different depths. So there's a lot of different intricacies that you can, put in a long lining, messing with colors, size of baits, shapes of baits, the line that you're using. Go a little bit lighter line. It's going to go a little bit deeper. The speeds, the slower you go, the deeper those jigs are going to go. The size of your jig heads, whether you're going to run an 8th, a 16th, a 32nd, 2/16. There's a lot to play with. And what I tell everyone is get really good. Don't even think about forward-facing sonar. Get really good with your electronics at the console, your down imaging, your side imaging, and your mapping. Because once you find those fish, especially for long lining, using your down imaging, you've seen those fish between 6 to 12 foot of water, where you need to be focusing on your jigs, right? And understanding what depths your jigs are running, or if you're, using minnows or whatever. I pull jigs. It's really what I like to do. I try to stay away from live bait as much as I can until we get in the summertime, just because I love pulling jigs, and it works this time of year. Catch a lot of big fish doing that. So, that's kind of the way that I have it set up, and everyone does it a little bit different, but to keep it basic, it's kind of how I run them.
That's so crazy, because 16-foot rod, dude. Damn, that's in a bass world. You never, tournament regulations, everything, get away with that. But the more people I talk to in crappie, it's interesting how important that rod length is for so many techniques. Are you running 4-pound test, 8-pound test? What is the line setup when you're dealing with a rod that size?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. A lot of what I'm running is 6, but I'll run up to 8, especially 8 when we're around timber and wood, and really for even those bigger crappie. When I'm having clients on the boat, I'm cognizant of who I have on the boat, right? And I really want to make sure that we're landing those fish, and someone could catch their new personal best. So when we're running in a 2+ pound crappie, running 6-pound tests sometimes can be a little light if someone's kind of horsing it in, and teaching them how to bring those fish in and using your drag is really important, and all the stuff that I kind of go into. But with the water clarity and whatnot, you can run 8-pound tests, no problem. If I want to get it a little bit deeper, but keep my speed the way that I want to, around 0.7 all the way up to 1.1, 1.2 miles an hour, then I'll go down to 6, but I typically keep it around 8.
When you were fishing tournaments, I know this is a little bit different than when you're guiding. On 8-pound test, are you boat flipping them? Are you always going to be using a net? I mean, like, what is your gut on how big the fish has to be to where, like, I shouldn't probably try to flip this thing in the boat?
Yeah, it depends on the situation. If I'm fishing a tournament, I'm using a net because I don't want to lose that. I
Okay.
can't tell you how many times I've fished a tournament and it's like, yeah, screw it, I'm gonna boat flip it. You boat flip
Yep.
that fish and there it goes. And it's like,
Yep.
dang, that fish could cost me. Even that fish that I told you that would have put me in contention for the tournament out on Jordan, I went to net that fish and the jig still popped off. If I went to boat flip that fish, good night, it would have never happened. It popped off of me trying to boat, just trying to net it, not even boat flip it. So, if they're a good pound and a half plus, probably going to net those fish, especially if the bite gets tough. Every bite matters at that point. If the bite gets tough, every fish matters. It can be the difference of going home with 25 fish or 10 fish, honestly, especially when the fish get finicky. If they're not fully choking that jig, you want to make sure you're boating those. You want to make sure you're putting those in the live well. People want to have a fish fry. You want to take that risk of, I'll pull it up and, sometimes I'll grab the line and there goes the fish. And it's like, dang, I probably should just net it. There's no shame in just netting that fish.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I didn't even think about it just ripping out versus the line snapping. But when you're dealing with fish that have such paper thin mouths, that definitely can be a factor. Interesting. Huh.
Especially when you're long lining, they're swiping that jig. So sometimes they're not always getting it good. So, you don't know how they're hitting that jig compared to live scope, and you can see how they're hitting that jig. You can see if they're coming up and that jig is, slowly in front of them and they're tracking it, and all of a sudden they swim really fast and they just inhale it. They've got it pretty good. It's down there.
That's interesting. How important is color to crappie compared to bass?
It's a really good question. Before this winter, I would have said not really. But this winter, I really started messing more with colors with crappie and have noticed a pretty big difference. Today is a perfect example. Out on Jordan, we just got a ton of rain last night. I was on a trip yesterday. Trip was due to end at 12:15. It was absolutely downpouring. I mean, torrential downpouring. And that water dirtied up a little bit. And I had, going into it, came back from that trip yesterday, rigged a bunch of rods preparing for the trip that I had this morning, and had all different colors. And pink and white's my favorite color. I'll just tell you right now, that's my favorite color to go with. But today, pink and white wasn't doing it. I think we got one bite all day on pink and white, and then we were switching to purple and black and chartreuse. Typical dirty water colors. It really did make a difference today. Every single fish that we caught today was on a dark purple, black and purple, or chartreuse color plastic today. We had white, we had, your monkey milk, we had pink and white. They didn't want to touch those. Switched, and that was a huge game changer. So now I'd say it can play a pretty big difference, or make a pretty big difference and play pretty well. And when you're going out there, so looking at that watercolor, knowing your conditions is really important.
I wonder why. I really wonder why switching to pink. It has to be the way it looks in the water to them.
Well, pink is one of the first colors to disappear in the water column. So
fascinating.
Yeah. So pink, I don't hear a lot of people talk about pink, but maybe because it's a sleeper color. I don't talk about it as much, but I'll tell you now, because it's my favorite color, it don't matter. But it mattered. It's been mattering the past couple of weeks. And noticing those subtle differences, understanding where you're getting bites, when you're getting bites, what you're getting bit on, can also determine the type of day that you're going to have. If you're not paying attention to that, another example today is I had 6 rods out. 3 of them had 2 16th-ounce jig heads. The other 3 just had 1 16th. So we're running different depths in the water column, different colors in the water column on all. We got bit almost every single fish today on the 2 16ths because those fish were a little bit deeper. We messed with running pink and white, pink, monkey milk deeper, 1 fish. We put black and purple, chartreuse on. Every single one of our fish the rest of the day came on all of those on the 2 16ths that were run a little bit deeper. You look on your down imaging, and again, you don't even need forward-facing sonar for this. So the people that really don't like forward-facing sonar, you can go out and catch these fish no problem right now. We didn't even use forward-facing sonar today. You look at your down imaging, you see those fish and where they're at, and really dialing in, spending time understanding, knowing what you're looking at, differentiating. Is that bait? Is that white perch? Are those crappie? What are they, catfish? making those adjustments played huge today for us and was the reason why we caught those fish, making those micro adjustments and understanding how are we getting bit, put 2 16th-ounce jig heads on all the rods, every single rod was going off.
That is, dude, it's the devil's always in the details. I don't care if it's a trout, crappie, catfish, bass, muskie, it doesn't matter. It's always the details is what's going to separate you to get more bites.
Yep, absolutely. Pay attention to it. It's important. It can be the key to having a great day or a bad day.
For lack of a better transition, largemouth bass or just the bass fishing in kind of the area. I know High Rock has had a bunch of tournaments. Normandy's had Normandy, like Norman. Normandy's a different place. Like Norman's had a bunch of tournaments. Bugs, like that area of the country that you're in right now is really starting to fire off. And I was pleasantly surprised at the High Rock weights. And that place usually has a steep drop off. My God, did that place really come out a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, High Rock is one of those places where, I feel like it used to be talked about more and more, but it kind of dwindled off, and then the crappie really started taking over. But if you pay attention to those tournaments out there, there are some big bass in High Rock. I've been out there a few times. I understand why they call it the mud hole. That place is very muddy, dirty water for the most part, depending on where you're at in the lake. That place is putting them out for sure. Around here on our lakes, you look at some of the tournaments, there's some pretty steep drop-offs, depending on which tournament trails you look at, it could go anywhere from a 29-pound bag, 26-pound bag, 18-pound bag, and that's just kind of the way it goes. The pressure on these lakes are pretty big, but you look at some of the trails that are around here that are more local and typically on these lakes, Jordan's getting a little bit of a break this year specifically. So I'm excited to see that because Jordan's my favorite lake. Again, someone's always going to be able to get to go out there and they're going to catch them. I was out there a couple of days ago and caught them pretty good. But it's that pressure's really getting to them. So having it get off Jordan a little bit this year, I'm excited to see what it does for it next year.
How many lakes would you consider to be in your area?
Falls, Jordan, Harris, you could add Buckhorn. Those are really the 4 that are in the area, if you will, that are more well known. There's some really smaller places around the area, but those are the major lakes around here.
Buckhorn, I have never heard of. I gotta go Google this damn thing and find it on maps.
That place. If you go out there, be careful. It can be a very dangerous lake with a lot of rogue stumps and trees out there, but yeah, that's a little bit of a sleeper lake you don't hear a whole lot about, but it's got some giants in there.
Do you feel like when you have so many lakes in the area, and maybe I'm teeing you up for this, all lakes don't get pressured equally? And to me, that's fascinating because we have a couple of places in Virginia, same way. Fredericksburg area comes to mind. There's about 5 lakes, much smaller than the ones that you're dealing with, but you can tell that one will just go off on social media or whatever, and that boat ramp's full, but then you just drive down the street 15 minutes and nobody's there. And it's such a weird, I don't know, social media experiment about how that works, but I don't know if that's what happens in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, I've got some feedback about, I'll post, about how I'm doing because I generally like to help people. And, it's like, keep it quiet, and that's just kind of how it goes, whether I'm a guide or not. I enjoy sharing the knowledge, and I get a lot of amazing feedback, but there's always going to be some pushback about exposing these bodies of water. And there's some projects that I've been involved in recently that are going to expose these lakes a little bit more, and filmed a TV show with Chris Douglas with really out on Jordan for crappie fishing for Carolina All Out. So that's going to get a little bit of exposure as well, which it is what it is, right? At the end of the day, the crappie population is so strong. I'm not too worried about it. The bass population, though, is a little bit more sensitive. It's a little disappointing going to the boat ramp and seeing 4 to 7 pounders dead up on the bank because they weren't taken care of. That's just kind of, conservation is really important. It's something that I'm really intrigued by and invested in. When I go out, I like to keep fish here and there, but I don't keep them. Me personally, especially those big females, bass. Well, especially I don't ever keep bass, but Crappie, I'm letting those things go. I want those genetics in the lakes. I want them to keep serving its purpose.
That is interesting. I'm at some point I'm going to be getting a biologist on to talk about forward facing sonar and catch and eat or catch and consume species like crappie, walleye, species that you could potentially make an argument about the issues with forward facing sonar because it can really hamper the species. Just to get some different flavors of opinions, when you can target like you can, do you think that it's more beholden to you to be very mindful conservation wise because of how easy, or is it still not that easy to over harvest those big girls?
I mean, crappie reproduce at such a fast rate, like insane. Like I wish I knew the exact stats, but it was something like I think it was a 10-pound crappie can produce anywhere between 25 to 50,000 eggs or something like that.
Wow.
Like it's somewhere up there. Like it's a lot. So, you take those and there's a lot of 2-pound crappie out in any of these lakes. They're everywhere. And me personally, like it's not because I don't like to eat fish. Like I like to eat fish, but I'm just all about I just enjoy being outside. I enjoy catching those fish. And I'm really chasing that bite. That bite for me is the drug, right? The tug is the drug, they say. I'm chasing that bite. When that bite happens, that's it. That's my high. That's what I'm chasing when I'm going out on the lake. So, them reproducing, not a real issue. They did put a limit on Harris though, on Sheeran Harris. That place hadn't had a limit on it as long as I've been down here. I don't think there's ever been a limit out there as far as I'm aware. But they put the same limit out there out on Harris that it's going to be, or that it's on at Jordan. So 20 per person, 8-inch minimum. And I believe that goes into effect on August 1st.
Yeah, the area you live in, man, it's just crazy. If guys, I mean, go on Google Maps, take a look. There's so many lakes surrounding that Raleigh area. It's interesting to me because you feel like when people say it's pressure, I always have to hold that with a grain of salt because I think it is depending on where you live. I mean, pressure in Ohio, where the biggest lake is like a pond, versus the pressure on Toledo Bend. It's like everyone believes it's the worst it's ever been. It just seems really nice when you have so many lakes so close together where it does spread people around to an extent. You can, in theory, just load the boat back up and go to another lake if it seems overcrowded because it seems like it'd be hard for every single lake to be pounded equally.
Yeah, I agree, and that's why I want to head to Falls a little bit more. It's not as close to me, which to your point earlier, like, is it because of location? For me, like it is, like Jordan and Harris are closer. I'm in, I'm south of Raleigh, so I got to go all the way around Raleigh to get to Falls, and depending on which ramp I want to go to, like Ledge Rock, for example, is an hour for me. I go to Barton Creek, and that ramp is I think it's like 42 minutes. So it's not close by any means. But I also want to be challenged more. I haven't fished Falls a whole lot. I fished it plenty of times for bass, but for crappie, not as much. But this year I'm definitely going to be hitting it. I'm going to learn that lake. It's going to happen.
You mentioned earlier that the bass fishing is not at 100% like it's been in the last 10 years. Is it just that it's going through one of those cycles that all lakes go through, or is there something else going on?
I think it's cycles. Every lake goes through a cycle. I have buddies who have talked about it where they said, Jordan, you used to be able to go out there and catch as many 2 to 3 pounders as you wanted, every single time you'd go out. Right. And then it got a little tough. And then, when I moved out in 2019, MLF came down here and really exposed these lakes, and there was a lot of pressure on them. But that is, at the same time, I think every lake's going to cycle. It's going to get good again. I'm excited to see if it makes a difference in what the weights are next year with some of these big tournaments, having some pressure off of Jordan and going to Harris and going to the Falls, a little bit more and seeing what that does, because Falls last year was popping off. Jordan over the past couple of years wasn't as consistently popping off, but Falls was popping off last year. You get out there and you had a good chance of going out there and getting a good bag. You look at those tournament weights, and there was some serious bags being pulled out of there. Even in the Wildcats, I think it's Thursday nights out on Falls. Those weights are really good. So I'm excited to see how it goes this year, and even more excited to see what it does next year.
When does the pre-spawn and spawn generally happen down there? Is it usually now, or is it in a couple of weeks?
Yeah, I think it's a little behind. Something that I've learned down here, and this took me time. So I I don't know how many people know this, but I'm just going to tell you now. These bass I've noticed, the big bass spawn a lot earlier than people realize.
Mm.
A lot of people think they got to wait for it to being in, the mid 60s. Seen bass on beds in the high 50s. Caught them off beds in the high 50s. Big ones. So typically I've noticed a lot of these bass will start to spawn if you have a good spring, and not a crazy winter like we had this past winter. You'll find fish on beds in February, depending on what the weather is. Full blown spawn though is typically probably about mid-March. Like, it's pretty good. Like, our water temps are barely in the 60s right now. By now, we don't have an issue with it being in the 60s. So we're a little bit behind, and we're really close to having it be on fire. All depends on what Mother Nature's going to do, though.
It's funny because I feel like the Rorschach question I'm asking everyone on the show right now is, we've had one of those coldest winters of all time this year. And we had the last time you and I talked, it was literally snowing in Raleigh, which was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Does this make for a better pre-spawn bite? Like, when it's like it's been cold and these fish want to move up and they're chomping at the bit, versus when it feels like it's 70 degrees in December. Does that really make the fishing better, worse, or is it indifferent?
I'll tell you, I think it's going to make it better this year because these fish want to get up on the bank. They are so eager. You can tell when they start to group up, the way that they're starting to group up. I was fishing that crappie tournament on Saturday, and I hit this one area that I'm not going to say because I got another one coming up, and I don't want to give it away because there's a lot of crappie in that area. But I hit this one area. As I was scanning, I could see them loaded, and I could see crappie up top and some marks down below. Well, I dropped that crappie jig down there and let it go through the crappie. Had to catch a couple because they were hitting it before I could get down to the fish below them. And 4.5 pound bass comes up and just absolutely engulfs it. And there was probably 10 to 12 of them sitting there. And I mean, they were in no more than, I think it was 6-7 foot of water. They're ready. Like, they want to move up. So when that move happens, it's going to be all out. Like, it should be really good. I think it's going to be killer. I think this spring should be really good. I'm excited to see, being from up north in New Hampshire, the fishing down here, I'm still learning it, to be honest with you, but being on the water every day, I'm learning it a lot. I'm spending more time crappie fishing, but like I said, bass is really my preferred. If you tell me crappie over bass, I'd probably choose bass fishing. That's still my number one love, but they're eager. They're ready to get up there, and it's going to happen with the water temps getting the way that it is. It's going to happen fast.
That's awesome. Yeah, and that's interesting because we don't usually have these type of winters anymore, and I think it has made the spawn more. It happens in waves. It's not as defined as potentially what you used to read about in Bassmaster growing up. And this winter, a lot of people that I've talked to say that what you're saying is it's just all the steps are now really defined of like, this is winter, this is pre-spawn, and they are really wanting to push up, and they're just waiting for something to tell them. And maybe now it is just water temperature. I think when's our next full moon? I probably should have known that, but we have another full moon coming up. So I don't know if they're going to wait for the full moon or just water temperature or both to make that big jump, but it's going to happen here soon.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I've read, and, again, it really depends on where you read it, who you talk to, but those crappie, the longer your days get, like, I think it's about 14 hours. When you have 14 hours of daylight, those crappie are going to full blown push. That's something that I read recently.
That makes
now
sense.
I'll tell you now though, like I know there's already a wave that moved up on Jordan. I saw it, and those females are already off the bank and they're staging. And there's another wave that got into these areas literally today, like maybe even a little bit yesterday. Really got in these areas, and there's a really good push. So. You catch even these crappie and you look at those big females, they're ready to pop. Like, they want to get up there. Like, you can tell they're eager to get up and spawn, drop those eggs, and then go. And even these bass right now, you catch those bass and they're dang healthy. I mean, they're fat. They're really, really fat right now. So, I mean, the next full moon, I think, is April 12th.
Yeah.
That's going to be huge. That's going to be big.
That's going to be go time.
That's only a couple weeks. So
no, yeah,
it's
dude.
less than 2 weeks now, I think. So right, that full moon pushing up could be absolutely cute. I will make sure that I'm out on the water that day.
Yeah, this is the time for people that are going to be listening to this on Apple or Spotify or YouTube. Take your vacation between now and mid-April. I feel like there's from North Carolina all the way through Virginia, things are going to start popping off here because everyone I've talked to, all my friends say like it just feels like there's this anxiety in the water of them wanting to go to that next step, but they're just waiting for a cue. So
kind of like cabin fever, right?
Yeah.
Like when you're cooped up all winter, it's like you just want to get out and go. That's kind of the mood that these fish are in right now, and you can just tell by the way that they're set up. They want to go. They want to hit the bank.
Do you think the bass follow the crappie in as a food source?
Oh, absolutely. And I know that because I've had many bass come up and eat the crappie right next to the boat.
Oh my God.
You know, like it's last year I was out there with he just turned 3. We were out there, we were crappie fishing, and we had a slip cork with some minnows around some wood, and this crappie comes up, watch the cork go down, starts bringing it in. It was a 13.5-inch crappie, and I'm not joking. The reason why I know that because we got it in the boat and we measured it after. But as he's bringing it in, he brings it next to the side of the boat, and all of a sudden this bass comes up and absolutely engulfs it and starts tearing drag of his little blue pole I got on Amazon. Starts ripping drag, and I loosed the drag a little bit, and so it didn't really feel it, hoping that she wouldn't spit that crappie. That crappie was every bit of 8 pounds. Every bit of 8. And I've caught 2 10-pounders, so like I know what like a true 10 looks like. It was not a 10, but it was at least 8. And that 8-pounder ate a 13.5-inch crappie. By the time we got to the side of that boat and I went to go get her, she spit it. But I can't tell you how many times that's happened. A lot of times too, what people don't realize is you may notice that you catch, like, always reel your bait in to the boat. Don't, like, I have such a bad habit too of casting once I feel like I'm out of like the sweet spot in the strike zone, reel it in so fast, get out again. I can't tell you how many times I have gotten bit right next to the boat. And a lot of the reason being, and I've watched fish, especially with forward-facing sonar, I've seen this, where those fish will use the boat to pin bait fish up against your boat and feed. They will do the same thing with crappie. Crappie, whether you're reeling it in or you're above a school, those bass will be right around them. They will come up, they'll push those crappie, and they'll use the boat. It's the same thing if you're fishing by a bluff wall or you're fishing a cut, right? And it gets shallow, and those bass will start to push those shad or bait or crappie, whatever, up in the shallows. It's easier for them to feed, right? They're not dumb, right? Like they're gonna make it as easy as they can to feed. And I've caught them. Actually, I caught 2 7-pounders 2 weeks ago on a glide bait. The first one came no more than 6 feet from the boat. I watched that fish come up, and I ran out of real estate. I clicked my reel, let a little line out, let that bait go down, and then one pop right next to the boat, she came up and ate it. 7-2. Very next cast, saw another one on another piece of a structure, cast that glide bait out of the air, 7-1. Now that one ate it right next to the structure, but the first one ate it right under the boat, so don't be fooled. If you know where the crappie are, you better be fishing. If you bass fish, you better be fishing where those crappie are. I have a lot of clients that I'll take out too that have like, I don't really crappie fish. I said, you will be a better fisherman if you learn these crappie. Because if you learn these crappie and how these crappie set up, those bass are right there. They're not far.
How do crappie spawn? I mean, like with bluegill and sunfish, they make the big saucer pans, and when they do their whole deal, do crappie do the kind of the same thing, or what do they do?
A lot of the way crappie will get up and spawn is on wood, rock. If you have a little bit harder bottom, which is typical, especially for bass, a little bit harder bottom, crappie will spawn on that. But if you can get laydowns, I saw crappie males up on a laydown in the limbs, and they will make nests on those limbs. And you could be anywhere from 1 foot to, these fish were, on top of this, these limbs in about 3.5, 4 foot of water. Just drop a jig right above them, and they were like, they would immediately inhale it every single time. Every single one was over a pound too. They were so aggressive. And that could have been where the first wave moved up. They drop females dropped eggs and they were protecting, because you catch some of these ones, them males I talked about earlier, in this podcast, they'll turn jet black, right? You keep them in the live well, you keep a male in the live well, they look like they're a little bit darker. By the end of the trip, they're black. They got that tuxedo on, they call them. Those males that's exactly what they're doing. They're protecting, those fry. They're up there first building those nests. The females don't stay around. Those females will move up. They'll get on wood. They'll get on rock, whatever. They'll spawn, lay their eggs, and they're gone. They don't hang around. So it's a little bit different than what you may be used to for bass fishing, where you'll see a female staying around that bed for a few days, drop the eggs, and stay for a couple, and then she's gone. And that's why if you focus on the pre-spawn and you focus on those fish that are staging, those females that are not up on the bank yet, those females, especially in the morning, once that sun gets up and the water starts to warm up, those fish, I saw it today, the wave of fish will start to move up shallow. Early in the morning, until that sun gets up, focus on that little bit deeper water where they're going to be staging. That's where you're going to get your big females before they decide to make that push and move up. That's your best chance of getting those big ones, especially if you have live scope. You can really target those. But we caught them long lining today. We saw them staging about 6 to 9, 10 foot of water. That's how we caught those bigger ones.
With your scope, when you're dealing with crappie versus bass, do they have a stranger danger kind of bubble where can you scope them a little bit closer than you do bass? Do you have to always have it set at like 100+ feet? Like, what do you do?
I've noticed it depends on the mood that they're in. I was on a trip about a week and a half ago, where if you stepped on the boat and made too much noise, the crappie were gone. Like, they were so skittish. I've had other times where you could be banging on the boat, stomping, whatever. They don't care. You can bang around your rod lockers. They don't care. I preferably like to stay as far back as I can. I don't want to ruin an opportunity to catch a fish, especially if it's a big fish, by getting too close. That's a whole nother subject. I'm looking into the power brakes to get on, and I thought they were the dumbest things when I first saw them. I'm not lying. When I first saw, I told my buddy, I said, I will never have those stupid things on my boat. I'm not lying. I'm seriously considering them. I can't tell you how many times, especially when it gets windy, I'm on a really good fish. It's like, ooh, that's a good one. And then all of a sudden, I get up too fast on that fish, or the wind blows me over them, and then you prop wash, completely blow them out, and they're gone. You miss out on that opportunity. A lot of times where I catch myself saying, I wish I had those brakes. I wish I had those brakes. So, but I'm trying to keep my distance. With bass, I'll typically have my scope out about 100 feet. With crappie, I really like to have it around 60 or less. If I can be about 40 feet or further, that's always my goal. Sometimes in the summertime, it don't really matter though, especially when they get on like structure, rock piles, brush. Those crappie have nowhere to go. They're going to stay there. At least on these lakes around here, they will stay there all summer, all fall, until that transition happens, that fall to winter transition. Then they will eventually move. But we've literally sat and ran over with the boat scanning brush piles that are like 6-7 feet. They might move, but they go right back literally minutes later. Throw a slip cork over them and you're catching them.
That is interesting. Yeah, I've always been fascinated with how different species react, because again, it just seems like 100 to 120 feet for a largemouth, smallmouth, things like that. Crappie, they're a little bit more forgiving of the boat presence.
Yeah.
Which is interesting to me. And the fact is that crappie seem like they will come back, versus largemouth, sometimes they won't.
Unless there's a reason for the bass to come back, no. But them crappie, especially when they get, like I said, they get on brush, that's one thing that a lot of people don't realize. And this might be something that will help. I get a lot of feedback that it helps a lot of people. When it gets hot, people are like, it sucks. Like, I'm staying inside. I'm spending time at the beach with the family. I'm telling you right now, on these lakes, the hotter the better. These fish will group up like you wouldn't, by the hundreds, if not thousands, on some of the structure that's out on those lakes. And they will stay there all summer into the fall. I was catching stuff now this past fall, winter was a little different, right? Like, we all know the weather was a little erratic compared to what we're used to. That cold hit a lot sooner. I was catching crappie on the summer patterns that I was fishing into November.
Wow.
Like, don't let the heat deter you from getting out on the lake. those crappie will group up. And, one of my trips last year in August, hot in August, we had 120 fish in one trip. Like you can destroy them. So, you can sit on those brush piles all day long if you want to. Those crappie don't care. If they're staying there, they're not going to leave.
That's awesome stuff, dude. I mean, Kyle, I mean, we've covered so much today. Is there anything that we kind of forgot about that we need to cover?
No, man, I appreciate you having me on. Good to catch up with you again. And that's really about, kind of what's going on right now. What's the date? 25th, March 25th. If you're in the area, it's about to get right here in the next 2 weeks or so. It should be absolutely on fire for bass and crappie. Crappie fishing's really good. The bass fishing's good. Focus on those shallow areas, staging areas. Those north facing banks can be really important. Those are going to get more sun. Your north end of the lake typically will be a little bit warmer. Those are really good places to start, and keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate things. I learned that, really forced myself to keep things simple years ago, especially coming down here to North Carolina from New Hampshire, where it was a whole different world down here compared to what I'm used to up north, fishing for smallmouth and bass and 15 foot of water that I can see all the way straight down. Versus out here, you might have 6 inches of visibility. Like that was a big difference. So keep things simple. I literally go to black and blue, green pumpkin, and watermelon red. Those are literally the only 3 colors I'll throw for bass, for plastics, for example. And maybe a couple other ones, but I don't overcomplicate things. Same thing with crappie. Right now the water's a little dirty with the rain that we got. Chartreuse, black and blue. Keep it simple, and you should be able to wreck them pretty good.
If people wanted to book a trip with you, what do they do?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, so if you want to know what's going on, like I said, I'm pretty open. I like to help. Follow me on Facebook, Farwell Fishing Guide Service on Facebook. I post regularly about my trips and kind of what I'm doing, how I'm doing it. You can message me. You can also go on Google and Google Farwell Fishing Guide Service. You can give me a call, shoot me a text, message me on Facebook, or you can go directly on my website, farwellfishing.com. And right at the top, you can click book your trip, and you'll see the options to be able to book. Traditionally right now, like I said, crappie fishing really, it's where it's at. It's really where I'm spending a lot of my time. And I'm just a straight up honest guy. I had someone call me about bass the other day, and I straight up told them, I said, listen, I've been so busy crappie fishing. I'm happy to help and give you all the knowledge that I can to help you out, but I'm just not bass fishing as much because I'm so busy crappie fishing because it's been that good. But yeah, farwellfishing.com, book a trip, reach out, give me a call, shoot me a text, and happy to help any way I can, get out on the water and make it the best we can.
Is that normal to be that busy with crappie versus bass? Or is this kind of a new wrinkle?
Man, that's a good question. I don't know what it is. I think crappie fish, people don't realize like how fun crappie fishing is, to be honest with you. I have so many people that get on the boat that's like, I've never done it before. But bass fishing's gotten so tough that it's like, I just want to go out and catch fish. That's a common theme, I feel like, and then people start catching fish. Like, yeah, like I'm a little kid at heart. Like I came across crappie fishing in, I think it was 2021. So I've only been doing it for about 4 years, and I've committed to spending a lot of time learning these fish. And, being a little kid at heart, I just want to catch fish. And, you can catch a lot of crappie, have a lot of fun, really push yourself too, whether you go to new lakes or you fish different techniques, or, that's the way that I learn. Like whether it's bass fishing or crappie fishing, I will only go out there and say, this is the one way I'm going to learn to fish. Like when I had to learn long lining, that was completely new to me. Those are the only rods and the only technique that I would do when I was out on the water. I would force myself to learn it until I felt good enough that I can go out and put clients on fish doing those specific techniques. Plus, being a guide, I have to be able to have that versatility to be able to do what's needed to get people on fish. I like to keep my guide trips engaging. I'm not your tradition. I don't like to just sit there, drop, a minnow down and drift, to be honest with you. That's not my style. I will do it if that's what we got to do, and if that's what the fish, how they want to eat. But I really like the live scope. I really like teaching with the electronics. I like, the scanning with side scan and finding brush piles or rock piles and marking them and throwing a slip cork or a jig. Those more engaging trips is really what I'm all about, and kind of what I enjoy doing most. But crappie fishing's exploding. It's awesome to see. And the bass fishing is still great down here. Like, don't get me wrong, bass fishing is phenomenal still. It's just not what I've noticed what it used to be. When I first moved down here in 2019, like I said, if you didn't have a 30-pound bag, good luck, you weren't winning the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Still plenty of bass to be caught. There's still several 10-pounders being caught down here every single year. They're still out there. You just got to put in the work, just like anything else. Put in the work, put in the time. I don't have 135 hours on my motor for nothing. I've only had the boat since September. So you put in the work, it pays off, and that's the most rewarding piece. Push yourself out of your comfort zone.
Good deal. Guys, as always, link in the episode description to everything that we talked about. Go check out Kyle at Farwell Fishing. Is it too early to talk about the TV show about that, when people can expect that coming out?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, so you can keep an eye out for that for, I was told about midsummer, most likely, potentially July, August. The episode will air on the Pursuit channel. Chris does a phenomenal job, and his filmer Josh. I mean, those are two really great guys. I had such a blast with them. So keep an eye out for that. They also air that on YouTube, so you'll also be able to see on YouTube. If you don't get the Pursuit channel, you can still watch that episode. That was a really, really good trip. Of course, we had a front that came through a couple of days prior to filming that. Fishing wasn't bad. We still caught like 30 or 40 fish. We still caught them, and caught some 2-pounders too. But after a couple of days of stable weather, that's when I had that day where I had 16 over 2 pounds. And, the fishing's good that, in February, especially. And we filmed that the first week of March. So you can expect to see that episode air in July or August.
Awesome stuff. Guys, go check him out. That is really, really cool things Kyle's got going on. Again, Farwell Fishing. Link in the episode description, everything we talked about. And also, guys, if you want to go check me out on Patreon, we only got 8 membership spots left before I shut that down to the public until 2026. And we'll see you next time on Fishing the DMV. Bye. You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your host, Thomas Ahrens. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.